do think there's a strong case in the world of work, and specifically in leadership, actually, around a humanities education. So I think, I did an MBA, but I also did a degree in English, and I've actually seen the value of that degree in a lot of the work that I've done, because I think a humanities degree will train you to think conceptually, it will develop your empathy, it will help you understand the power of ideas and the power of a mission. It helps you build a persuasive case, and if it's taught properly, particularly in a kind of one-on-one context, which we, of course, specialize in at NCH, I think it helps you communicate that charismatically. And one of the things that I think is kind of incumbent on a college called New College of the Humanities to do is make the case for the humanities. One of the things that we have done is a piece of research. We've looked at the British establishment, for want of a better word, CEOs, leaders of law firms, journalists, politicians, council leaders. We looked at what degrees they've got. And when you do the analysis, you see that 35% of them have got a humanities degree, about 30% of them have got a social science degree, not many in science, and by making this case for the humanities, I'm obviously not knocking science, because obviously we need a kind of balance, I think. A few of them have got vocational degrees, and a smaller percentage got no degree at all. And when I listen to kind of government talk about the instrumentalist case, I think what they're thinking, what they're responding to is what organisations like the CBI are thinking in terms of the needs of graduate trainees. So when you hire a graduate, as I've done a lot of, you need someone who can work an Excel spreadsheet. And you might get that from accountancy, or you might get that from engineering. But as you migrate through the organisation, you need these qualities, these capabilities, and attitudes and behaviour, as I said earlier, which I think the humanities make a fantastic training for. And so the next piece of research that we will do is looking at, I'd like to do a piece of anthropological research which will look at exactly what leaders do and then relate that back specifically to the skills and attitudes and behaviour that they've learnt in their degrees. Because there's a kind of richness which I think the current debate is missing.
I started as an engineering apprentice. And then decided that wasn't working for me, so I'd become a psychologist. It's not an easy transition to make, but it is possible. And then from psychology went into human resources, and then ended up doing the job I'm doing now. So it's a rather unusual transition. So I've seen education from all sorts of different angles, from the secondary modern system, which I can tell you is an experience in lowering aspirations, through the university system, and also as a mature student. So I've seen it from all sorts of different angles. And it's interesting because you might expect me to disagree with what Matthew said, and there's some bits of it I do disagree with. The bit I don't disagree with is around, I think it's very unhelpful to take an instrumental attitude to learning and to education. I think it's very dangerous to believe that you understand what the future requires and to plan for that in very narrow detail. I think diversity is a really important concept, and not just a kind of a trendy concept that we've linked to, we're sort of all thinking about now, but it's very, very important from an evolutionary point of view. Diversity is what makes it happen. The evolution isn't planned. Diversity, circumstances that creates sort of patterns of behaviour that are going to be successful, genes that are going to be successful, or those other kinds of things. So I think actually trying to plan it, trying to be too instrumental about it is absolutely not the right way to go. Where I do sort of disagree is, and this is a common factor, is the assumption that organisations want an instrumentalist sort of approach. That is certainly not the case in terms of Deloitte, and our approach is, we take students from all sorts of backgrounds. We don't say you have to have an accountancy qualification. We very actively have not, when we've got involved in education one way or another, the schemes that we've got involved in have not sort of sponsored, a university course in accountancy, which then leads you to become come and work for us. I mean, in some ways we've said to ourselves, well, you know, if somebody woke up as a 16-year-old and says, I want to be an accountant, are we really interested in them? Well, probably not, and only probably not. I mean, maybe we would be if they turned out to be interesting aside from that fact. So I think, and this is one of the things, I think also many humanities students are self-select out from organisations like ours because they think, oh, well, it's a place for science, technology students, it's not a place for humanities students. And I agree with you. We do need people to be competent with spreadsheets and numbers and all the other bits and pieces. And if you really fear numbers, then coming to an organisation like ours is probably not the place to come. But actually, we can teach you most of the stuff that we need. We can teach you how to run an Excel spreadsheet. We can teach you how to review a set of accounts. Increasingly, of course, we're not just accountants, we're doing all sorts of other things. But I do agree that it's those broader capabilities that are required as you go through the organisation. And for me, that's about diversity of recruitment. And I think we should be very careful not to engineer that out through the education system. That doesn't mean to say that if and part of that diversity argument, of course, is that if the science, technology, and engineering and maths skills are on the decline, and we don't have enough of those in the system, then the diversity argument says, well, you know, we should have a bit more of that, and that's equally a good thing. But I think that diversity of provision is really important.
So, Matthew, you write about all sorts of businesses. I mean, do you recognise what the sort of Deloitte diversity approach in lots of those businesses now?
Yeah.
Or do you think that the UK has problems in that we're too divided up?
I think we can be, but I think it's getting better. And I think I'd be a pretty good example of that in a way, because although I did a degree in English, I was always really interested in science, although I wasn't very good at it, and therefore only did A-levels in arts subjects. When I left university, having done a degree in English, I started doing A-levels in biology and stuff like that because I was kind of wondering what was going to be next. And surprise, after a year, I got a D or something like that. But
you still got it.
I really believe very strongly that if you read Hamlet and King Lear and Macbeth, you're going to produce better rounded people than if you just have done quantum physics and very little else. I think a proper education in the humanities teaches you argument, it teaches you judgment, it teaches you analysis. I'd say, as an editor, I'd say probably 75% of the people whom I employ have done degrees in the humanities. There are exceptions to that. My deputy has a degree in biochemistry, but they come to me, often having done a master's in journalism. They can read Excel spreadsheets and do maths and stuff like that. I mean, what's amazing about them is their extraordinary abilities that they have when they arrive in the world of work.
And Stevan, can you absolutely tell a humanities graduate? I mean, it's a very kind of bold question. Are they more articulate than the scientists? And is that more helpful in leadership long term?
No, I think it's very dangerous stereotyping, really dangerous stereotyping in this way. Because to give you an example, there's a woman who works with me. She is a fantastic finance person, absolutely fantastic. She came from the line, an auditor, brilliant. She works as part of the HR team, and Cambridge graduate. Brilliant person, brilliant at structuring arguments, brilliant at the spreadsheet, stuff she does with spreadsheets I could never even dream to be able to do. She's a humanities graduate. Yeah, I'd never, if you'd asked me, I'd have said, oh, natural sciences. She isn't at all. Now, she is introverted, she is very quiet, she is the stereotypical scientist. She's a humanities graduate.
Interesting.
So it's really important not to stereotype, to treat people as individuals, and to draw all sorts of different characteristics out of people. You know, that's
There is a point. I agree strongly with what Matthew said. There's a point about the danger of specialism, though, I think. And I mean, the great thing about New College of the Humanities, when you're starting something from scratch, you can kind of you aren't encumbered by kind of legacy and all those problems. And so what we have tried to do is create a program where people can focus on a single degree if they want to, but we also take modules from other degrees. We make our students do modules in applied ethics, logic and critical thinking, and science literacy. So we think you can't consider yourself to be fully educated unless you understand about cosmology, evolutionary biology. scientific method. And then our students also do, I don't like to call it this, but it is in effect a mini MBA as well, because the reality is, although the previous panel were talking about people doing MBAs, interested in working in the kind of voluntary sector, et cetera, the point is that we're going to have to work and make money as well. And increasingly, kind of education is becoming more and more expensive, and we need to give people the abilities to get good jobs too. And so universities, I think, which don't offer that kind of professional training will disadvantage their students.
Yeah, it's interesting what you say. I mean, listening, going to what Matthew was saying about interest in science coming from an arts background. I got very interested in the sort of university science spin-out sector and worked as a communications consultant for quite a lot of those businesses. And there's a belief in certain areas of government that this is our future wealth, is coming out of university bioscience and technology. You know, that's where we're going to, rather like the Americans have done in Silicon Valley, that's where we all generate serious amounts of money. But if you look at a lot of those people running those spin-outs, they are science graduates or recently undergraduates, and communication skills aren't always that brilliant. So again, there is this. I think there is a bias in sort of government circles towards finding science of companies because they're going to generate revenue in the end, and that's when the sort of divisive, the two cultures comes back into play again. So
why aren't they trying to find the next Ridley Scott? It's crazy to take that sort of an attitude, really. I mean, when you think the kind of cultural heritage we have and the value of our culture exports in this country, they're not often sufficiently quantified, are they? And to pretend that that's not worth something focusing on is really short-sighted. The other point I want to make quickly is entrepreneurship was brought up in the previous panel. The truest entrepreneurs tend to be academic failures anyway. They tend to have not done very well at school for whatever reason, and so the whole kind of science, humanities thing is sort of irrelevant to them. We need, as a country, to do what we can to encourage them, the creation of new businesses, and they're in a different pot altogether because they, for whatever reasons, and there have been interesting studies linking, to things like dyslexia with entrepreneurialism and stuff like that. You have to think about what you can do to encourage that as well, because that's something that we really desperately need in this country, is the creation of more and new businesses.